All right, good morning, everybody. We are going to get kicked off with this next panel, and I'm excited to be able to introduce my friends and colleagues up here. My name is Lee Bratcher. I'm the president of Texas Blockchain Council. We're an industry association working to make Texas a leader in all of these industries, especially Bitcoin mining. At 2:30 today, if you are a miner, in the Oakwood Ballroom, we're going to have a discussion around a new potential load category and talk about providing ERCOT with a little bit more visibility into this industry to assist them, basically help them help us, is the best way that I could put it. So at 2:30 today in the Oakwood Ballroom, that would be great. If you are a miner, you can stop by and have that conversation, discussion with us. Okay. I'm not going to be able to stay up too much longer because this is an all-Aggie panel. Unfortunately, I'm not an Aggie, so they're going to kick me off the stage in just a minute. But I do want to introduce some friends and colleagues on the stage. I'm excited to hear the conversation. Moderated by Steve Kinard, Director of Bitcoin Mining Analytics at the TBC, former Vice President for Energy Finance at Bank of Texas, has really dove into this industry, drove all around the state of Texas, delivering Bitcoin mining machines to cities, municipalities, all kinds of groups. So excited to have him moderate this conversation. Congressman Bill Flores served as a public servant for many years and also in private industry, and now sits as the vice chair of ERCOT. So provides a lot of perspective from his vantage point. Professor Korak Ray. Professor Ray is the director of the Mays Research Innovation Center here in College Station. He's also the incubator of the Texas A&M Bitcoin Conference, which has just had their second conference a few months ago, and has done a great job cultivating, the Aggie network to educate them about Bitcoin, and we're excited for future partnerships with A&M and the Bitcoin mining industry. We also have Professor Lay. Professor Lay, help me with the pronunciation of your last name. Xie. Professor Lay Xie, who is a modeling expert, mathematician, professor, and an expert on the ERCOT grid and probably all grids, I would assume. We're privileged to be able to hear from him and to have his expertise here at Texas A&M. ERCOT leans on him quite often as well. So truly a panel of experts, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you, Lee. That was a great introduction. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to lead off before we dive into this distinguished panel with an announcement of a new strategic partnership between the Texas Blockchain Council and Texas A&M. As many of you may know, most of the research in academia that's often referred to in media outlets is from Cambridge in the United Kingdom. And as a Texan, to me, that was unacceptable. And so we started to look for a longer-term solution to bring that here to Texas where it needs to be. And as a former student of Texas A&M, I'm really excited to kick off this partnership with the university. I think the expertise they have, some of which is on this panel, is tremendous. And as a first step in that new partnership, we have this S19 that we will be donating to the university and working with them to be the first of many, I hope. And so I encourage all of you here today to come talk with us. We'd like to involve as many people in the industry as possible. We will be launching a Bitcoin mining foundation that will be a new 501c3 entity so that you can partner with us in a tax-deductible way and be included in this new partnership that I think will really make Texas a leader in research and development and support the industry as we continue to grow and mature. So I'm really excited to kick that off, to make Texas a leader in more ways than one. I think Texas A&M is the right place, the right university, and just a phenomenal resource for this industry, and this is the perfect place to announce that. So with that exciting beginning, I'd like to start by kind of giving each of you an opportunity to give an overview of how you discovered Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, sort of the origin story, and really what led you to believe that there's a significant opportunity for the state of Texas and maybe more relevant to today's discussion for Texas A&M particularly.
Well, thanks, Steve.
Am I on? Okay, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Aggieland. I hope that it's going well for you. How many of you currently have operations in Texas today? So, how many of you are coming to Texas tomorrow? Okay. All right, good. Anyway, what got me started to be interested in Bitcoin was this guy right here. So he had the first annual Bitcoin conference at Texas A&M, I think it was April of last year. And so I just kind of on a lark, I signed up to go to it. I was kind of like Darren who, on the prior panel a minute ago, that thought it was something that just criminals used to buy drugs and things like that. And so anyway, let me give you a couple of disclaimers before I say anything else. Number one is I'm speaking on my own behalf, not as a member of the ERCOT board, so I'm not expressing any policy positions of ERCOT. This is just me as an interested citizen and an ERCOT constituent. Also, I am an investor in Bitcoin. I'm not an investor in mining because I have a conflict of interest policy I have to follow at ERCOT that keeps me from investing in Bitcoin mining. So just so we clear that. Texas is a great place to be for Bitcoin. As I got to know the space after going to Korok's first Bitcoin conference, started paying a lot of attention, and I started seeing what it could do for Texas in terms of economic opportunity, what it could do to help bolster our image as a leader in technology, and also the benefits. As I got involved with ERCOT, I also saw the benefits as to what it can do to help us stabilize an increasingly more challenged grid because of growth and the addition of renewables. And so that's got me interested in it. I continue to be fascinated by the space. I learn more every day. Appreciated Michael Saylor's comments when he called miners a crumple zone for the grid. I never thought about that. That was pretty unique terminology, which I'm going to use from now on. But with that, I'll turn it over to Korok.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bill. First, I want to thank John for organizing this conference. This is a fabulous event. I came to Bitcoin in 2011. I still am, I guess, a recovering game theorist. And I was reading the white paper in 2011. My students at that time were asking me about Bitcoin. It was priced at around $400, which seemed expensive, which was my mistake. And then when I came to Texas A&M in 2015, I launched the Maze Innovation Research Center in 2017. And it became pretty clear to me after that the greatest innovation of our time is Bitcoin. There was no question in my mind that that was the case. And so since that time, I've directed a lot of the resources of my center towards understanding and promoting and getting students also engaged to really understand this radical new technology that can, in the best way possible, dismantle the legacy financial system. One of my students, Matt Lostro and Grant Weston, the pair of them started the Texas A&M Bitcoin Club, which we formed 2 years ago, and we are still running. And Jackson Stewart out there is our current president, and he and as well as Matt Lostro introduced me to Bitcoin mining and all of the innovation and technology there. In this last year, I worked closely with Le, who's educated me a lot about the details of Bitcoin mining. He won our Best Paper Award at our conference in April. And so it's been a glorious adventure the last few years, and I am excited about A&M, their prominence in this field, and I hope we can do whatever we can to push this amazing technology forward.
Thank you, Korok, and thank you, Steve. It's a great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the Aggieland. My association with the Bitcoin, it really started off what I do on a daily basis. I'm a power system engineer by training, so I deal with ERCOT and power grid companies for more than a decade. I have more than 20 former students who are now working at ERCOT or related companies. And I keep hearing about blockchain, Bitcoin in the research community. There's a lot of work about utilizing ideas from blockchain to perhaps facilitate energy transactions, things like that. And I was never I was always having a bit of a healthy criticism of it. What's going on there, right? And then until more recently, thanks to Korok, and some of the connections we have with the Texas Blockchain Council, that now I realize, this is one of the biggest energy disruptor of our times. And then these two dots started to connect. Okay, not only this blockchain could facilitate on the contractual side of things, it actually could become one of the biggest energy disruptor for a state that prides so much about its leadership of energy. As we had this gloried past of leading the oil and gas innovations in the world, I felt like this is a very unique time for us to be the leading state and leading university for innovations in the energy digitization transformation, a title which I happen to carry. I'm the Associate Director of Energy Digitization at the Energy Institute. So I'm very, very excited about this transformation, and I'm very excited to see similar-minded people right here, and yeah, exciting times.
Thanks, guys. I'd like to direct the next question to our two professors, Korok and Ray. Many professionals in this room and across the Bitcoin mining industry probably view the technology as something that tends to undermine traditional institutions, and certainly it does in many cases. And on the flip side of that, some in academia probably view Bitcoin as too unproven, unimportant, or just not worth allocation of time and resources. I'd like you all to take a little bit of time to give us an outlook on your view of the potential for collaboration between a large public research institution like Texas A&M and why it's mutually beneficial for Texas A&M and the Bitcoin mining industry. And perhaps a little bit of the work that y'all are already doing, because I know you're much further ahead than probably many other institutions.
Thank you, Steve. So everything you say about universities, I believe, is largely true. The academy is still largely skeptical of Bitcoin. And it's not only of Bitcoin. I think any radical new innovation, universities and professors tend to be a little bit more backward-looking rather than forward-looking. I've thought a lot about this. I have an essay called "Bitcoin and the Academy," which is coming out in National Affairs in the fall, which is exactly about this issue. Like, why is the university system so kind of hostile to these radical new ideas? It has a lot to do with the way universities are structured and designed. We operate in silos. We're sort of rewarded for incremental rather than radical advances and so on. But the short answer is that Texas has a unique, a little bit of a different opportunity, because our state really is and always has been the land of pioneers. If you think of the people who came to Texas when Texas was formed, they were radicals from the East Coast who wanted to come out to the Wild West in what was back then the first gold rush. And I think now is our second, that opportunity is ahead of us right now. And the good news about Texas A&M is that it has strong, as you know, strong intellectual and physical assets in the energy industry, and so it is very much the best place possible, in my opinion, to launch this new investigation into Bitcoin. It's still an uphill battle with majority, in my opinion, with the majority of the faculty. Running our conferences the last 2 years, it was an uphill battle, but I still was able to pull it off, and I hope to continue to do that in the future.
If y'all haven't gone to the Texas A&M Bitcoin Conference, I recommend you go next year.
Even an engineer can win a Best Paper Award. Can you believe
That's right. I enjoyed it.
So I guess I have two messages. I'll start with the bigger one, and I'll go with some of the more detailed one. Just to follow up what Korok said, we really have put our minds together, and we are launching a new initiative called Scalable and Sustainable Energy for Bitcoin. And we believe this is a very unique opportunity for us to work together with all of you to push this agenda forward. It has 4 major components. Education. I guess you guys all need people who understand Bitcoin, right? You can train them for 10 hours and start working on it. You also need innovation on new design of machines and new design of chips and so on. Energy efficiency. All these are great expertise at A&M. Research. What is going to be the impact of having 10 gigawatt of Bitcoin mining on ERCOT grid? What is the value proposition of all of this? There's a lot of unknowns. We need to address those to do a science-based, model-based approach. Public perception. Is Bitcoin good? Is Bitcoin bad? Are we still in the criminal zone or what? There's a lot of need for understanding this from a public perception perspective and policy support. Folks in Austin, folks in Washington, D.C., they need some science-based, model-based analysis to support this, legislaturely speaking and executive branch speaking. And all of that, we feel like Texas A&M is very uniquely positioned, having a center like what Korok is leading on, focusing on innovation, and having a long-standing tradition of leading the energy systems. We are probably one of the best and strongest energy system programs anywhere in North America. So we thought that, this is a very unique place and very unique time, very unique location to make it all happen. That's the bigger message. Now I want to go to my second message, and if you can pull up the slides, I just give you some very, again, after all, I'm an engineering professor. I cannot resist talking about numbers and figures and so on. So I'll just have to bore with you with a few of those. All right? So we actually have already begun, as Korok mentioned in his conference, to study about the potential of utilizing crypto mining for demand flexibilities in electric energy system, something I think many of you care deeply about, right? So again, we utilize the great resources that we have out here, and one of our colleagues have developed this very good synthetic large-scale grid model that is modeled after Texas. It's a 2,000 node system. And we started to do conceptual studies and detailed simulations, for example, looking at what is going to happen in different locations, mining facilities out in the West Texas, mining facilities nearby Rockdale, and so on and so forth. And if you were to add incrementally 1 gigawatt, 2 gigawatt, 3 gigawatt, what exactly is going to be the impact on the grid, right? You can't just say it's good or bad. You have to do some studies. And a lot of people, you are coming from the mining side. So this whole ERCOT ecosystem enterprise is kind of a big unknown to you, right? What does ERCOT do? Does ERCOT own any generators? No. They own a bunch of computers and a bunch of people, right? So they are the system operator. And then you have to deal with generation companies, transmission distribution companies, load serving entities, something what we call in Texas QSEs, qualified scheduling entities. All these jargons, don't click in your mind in the first time when you hear about it, right? So what do they actually do and relate with each other? So the key idea is, how are these going to really affect the grid operator, right? I'll give you just a very quick overview of something that fresh off of press. One is about the impact on the so-called locational marginal prices. That's something that is basically how the wholesale spot market is being operated upon, right? So you can see that if you were to add this demand in different locations, they do have some impact on the clearing prices of ERCOT markets, right? And then we further gave you some statistics about that, So the mean value in this particular scenario does not change too much, the average value. So the average price does not increase that much. But what is increasing a bit more, a lot more, is the variation, the fluctuations. So I guess the key kind of a takeaway message you got from this again, this is a preliminary study, but it kind of suggested that if you were to add this type of demands into a system like ERCOT, the price volatility is going to be increased, which, depending on how you see it, you may see this as a potential challenge, but also you may see this as a potential opportunity, because whenever there is opportunities, whenever there is a fluctuations, that's time for you to make arbitrage and so on. So that's on the impact on the average prices. So one message I want to talk about here is that just like the real estate, what matters the most is location, location, location. What matters the most here is also location, location, location. The location of different installation of Bitcoin on the ERCOT market, or a synthetic Texas grid model market, is drastically different. Even if you add the same amount, their impact on the price is drastically different. And therefore, one needs to be fully cognizant of this locational aspect of ERCOT market and how it affects the power grid. So again, I just want to use this as a small, teaser of the kind of research, the kind of know-how, the kind of expertise we have here at A&M, and could possibly help you guys do much more detailed investigation on the impact of crypto mining and Bitcoin mining on power grid. And we do hope that this can become a win-win proposition for both the grid operator and also the Bitcoin miners. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Xi. As y'all can see, there's a bright future in doing more research along these lines, and Texas A&M is very well positioned to support the industry in that. Congressman Flores, you're in a unique position of leadership as Vice Chairman of ERCOT and on the advisory board of the Texas A&M Energy Institute. I'd like to get your thoughts and expectations of how ERCOT and the Bitcoin mining industry will or should collaborate, and what does the citizenship aspect of Bitcoin miners in Texas look like as we look to continue to grow?
Well, thanks, Steve. First of all, you stole my line. I was going to introduce the concept of good grid citizenship this morning, but he already beat me to it. Today, I mean, miners are a unique load, as you well know. But the way ERCOT classifies you, they classify you as a firm load, but you're far from firm. The other thing that's interesting about your load is that you guys can decide within a year to put 500 megawatts of load on our grid. And so that creates a challenge. Let me give you some examples of other large loads and what the time frame is there, and also some of the other attributes such as price sensitivity and your ramping capability. So if you look at everything outside of mining, you have things from steel mills to data centers to LNG facilities, oil and gas refineries, a large manufacturer like the new Samsung location in Taylor, or like the Tesla facility in Austin. And the typical size of those runs from 80 to 400 megawatts. The time to build is typically from 2.5 to 5. Your price sensitivity ranges from no sensitivity to high sensitivity in terms of your input electric price. And your ramping capability is typically slow, except within the case of data centers to steel mills, it's a little faster. But then you introduce this new space, this new mining business into our grid demand picture. You can, your typical size can be 500 megawatts. Some are, I've heard some, I've been to one location that's going to be 700 megawatts within a few months. You can be up and running in a year and a half. Your sensitivity to price is high and your ramping capability is high. So there's nothing in ERCOT's protocols that really fits that. And so in terms of being a good grid citizen, what I'm going to recommend that you do is, well, let me say this. A few years ago, it was kind of the Wild West. You were able to come here, you're able to locate close to a power source, and you could start drawing power pretty easily with a minimum of headache. But today, given the amount of aggregate load that's coming in, which today is probably roughly 2 gigawatts, but it's going to be, we're looking at another 5 being added in the next 12 months, and maybe even more, up to 21 gigawatts beyond that. That's going to take more planning. It's going to take more involvement, because if we have a grid failure of some type, whether it's caused by you or not, you're going to get blamed for it. Now, everybody's going to get blamed for it, but you will be blamed for it. There are journalists that know nothing about physics or economics that work for papers in Houston, Dallas, and Austin that are going to point the finger at you if we have a grid hiccup. And so it's important for you as an industry to collaborate, come together, work with policymakers, particularly in Austin. You're widely supported by policymakers, from governors all the way down to county judges, that support what you do. But you're going to have to amp up your level of building relationships with them, because it's going to take more statutory work to fit you in. You're going to need to work with the Public Utility Commission. You're also going to need to work with ERCOT as well, because ERCOT, at the end of the day, is the air traffic controller that tries to take the electrons from where they're generated to where they're needed, and you are a big player in that. So here are my recommendations to be a good grid citizen. The first thing is you need to engage, like I said, work with your policymakers, PUC and ERCOT. You may need to work on a change to the Public Utility Act to set up this new load that you are, this flexible load. You need to help develop a new interconnection process for large flexible loads. You need to proactively provide input for a new registration process for large flexible loads so that we can get you properly coded into the ERCOT system. You should consider becoming a part of ERCOT's SCID resource dispatch engine. Now, that's going to require that you share telemetry and visibility more than you have today. Typically, most of you have been pretty flexible in terms of load shed when ERCOT asks you to load shed, but as you continue to, in the aggregate, draw more and more from the grid, it's going to need to be more coordinated than it has been so far. And then the last thing is agree to work with ERCOT to incrementally shed load when requested by ERCOT. You do that now, but again, I think that's going to need to be a little bit more automated, and there's going to need to be more transparency. I know that some people are wanting to know how your pricing models work. You don't want to give that information away. I wouldn't want to. That's proprietary to each of you. But kind of find a way where you can share some information regarding the way you want to dispatch your load to work with ERCOT and all the other stakeholders in the Texas grid. So that's what I think is going to take to be a good grid citizen. Look, I think, as I've said at the outset, you and battery storage are both adding significant stability, or have the capability to add significant stability to the Texas grid. And so I'm hopeful that you could take your game up to the next level and working collaboratively with stakeholders so that we can continue to be a leader in this space.
Well said. Thank you, Congressman. Professor Xi, Texas A&M and you personally has a history of direct collaboration and research with ERCOT. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about that relationship and how you've worked with ERCOT and how having a university involved has been beneficial to ERCOT's desire to innovate and to continue to evolve.
Yeah, sure. ERCOT is a long-standing partner with Texas A&M. The ERCOT is as a member of the Smart Grid Center here, and they also sit on the advisory board of the Smart Grid Center, which I am in charge of the research coordination. We have trained perhaps dozens of, or perhaps more than dozens of ERCOT engineers just directly from our classrooms. We have the ERCOT executives come to our classrooms as guest lecturers. We work with them directly on one-on-one basis to solve some of the technical problems with them for more than a decade. And over the years, we work on a number of different issues on the technical front, from the wind integration, voltage support, black start, and so on and so forth. So we have been a true partner for many years of trying to leverage the university know-how and expertise here and solve some of the pressing problems for them. And that partnership has been very strong and very long. And we, as I typically explain to my students, whenever there is an infrastructure change, there's a research opportunities. And Bitcoin is representing one of the biggest infrastructure changes that's coming to Texas as an energy state. So we, in fact, have begun to engage with them on this particular problem of understanding the impact of miners on their power grid, from the planning perspective, from the operational perspective, from the pricing perspective. And that has been going on very strong, and we certainly look forward to engaging both the grid operator side, companies like ERCOT, as well as on the miner side, people like you, and convene very unique and independent platform for us all to have a dialogue and conversation. Yeah.
Great. There's certainly a lot of opportunity to build on that momentum. I have two closing questions for each of you. First, given that we have a lot of the leading Bitcoin miners in the room, what would be your top request or desire in terms of partnerships with Texas A&M, specific opportunities, or just what you would like to see in the near term, in the next year, if you can give any examples?
I'm not going to speak so much about Texas A&M as I am about the Texas grid writ large. It would be my hope that that the industry would work collaboratively with all of the stakeholders to fulfill the 5 attributes of being a good grid citizenship that I laid out a few minutes ago. I think a year that's an exceptionally fast timetable, but if you could, the quicker you could get this done, I think the quicker you're going to set the new infrastructure, if you will, for a way to come in and add load to the grid on an orderly basis that benefits your business and then also benefits the rest of the stakeholders in the ERCOT grid. So it'd be my hope that in a year those things could be done. That's pretty fast, but we do have a legislative session coming up starting in January, which is a good time to get involved with our state stakeholders. Don't forget, where I used to work on the federal side, don't forget those folks. You got people like Cynthia Loomis, who used to be a House member with me, who is working on legislation. So stay involved, but work fast, because we have a lot of boxes to check in a short period of time. So work together quickly, and I hope that we can get that done within a year.
Well, first I want to thank all of the miners in the room for securing the Bitcoin network, which to me is the greatest instrument of freedom in the world. So thank you for all your hard work. I would like to make a request for all the miners to share your knowledge with our students here at Texas A&M. I think Bitcoin is it's some of the hardest material and concepts out there, and it can be very abstract for a lot of people. The good part about mining is that it's very tangible, and I think it links up very well with the kinds of students that we have here at A&M. And so if you have any ideas of how to engage with the campus, if you want to come speak to our students, if you want to donate some mining machines so they can play around with them, come see me. I'll be at this conference all day. We have an off-campus lab where we have a bunch of miners that the Bitcoin Club manages. Jackson is actually in charge of that. We're setting up a Bitcoin house, actually. We have an alum that bought an apartment complex in Northgate, and we're going to make that a Bitcoin house. So if you're interested in Bitcoin, you can live there and hang out with other Bitcoiners and help move Bitcoin forward.
Again, great suggestions. Me coming from the engineering side, coming from the energy and power side, it is my biggest hope that we can make it a truly sustainable and a scalable partnership. How can we make this Bitcoin energy partnership to be scalable and also in the same time sustainable in multiple dimensions? It's one of the greatest challenges of our times. And we have some very talented students out here, people like Ali and Kiop, who are my co-authors. They are pushing the boundary on the research front. We have more than 50,000 students right here who are one of your greatest pool of talents for hiring for the future. And we have one of the best ecosystems anywhere you can find in the US as far as energy and Bitcoin is concerned. So I really want to make this as a true partnership that would push this towards sustainability and scalability.
Great. Last question, guys. All of us are Aggies up here, but some of the people in the room may not be as familiar with Texas A&M. Could you each just describe some experience involving Texas A&M that had an impact on your life?
Well, I guess mine would go back to when I was a student here, which was a long time ago. And it was a lot different. I mean, when I started, we had 15,000 students. When I graduated, we had 25,000. And what are we today? 70,000? So, something like that. But the thing about the school then is that there were people that would sort of seek you out, that became my mentors, people like Wayne Stark and John Coldis. And these are names that Aggies are all well aware of. But then there are a couple of others, like Wendy Graham, the wife of Senator Phil Graham, who was my first economics professor, who identified that I saw that seed, that I had that love of economics, and sort of took me under her wing to teach me more about economics. Or an accounting professor named Phil Youngdahl that got me interested in accounting, and I switched majors because of him. But there are those people that, along with my time in the Corps Cadets, which was brutal as a freshman, which made it easy to run for Congress. So those types of people really changed, and that experience changed my life and put me in a position to be where I am today. And so without my experience at A&M, I just wouldn't be the same.
For me, it's always been about the students here. I've taught at many different universities. At most other universities, in class, when I give a grade, it's the beginning of a negotiation. When I came to campus here, I really fell in love with the students. You know, I'm an economist by trade, and I think the mental model at most universities is a little bit economic and kind of arm's length, in the sense that people are constantly looking around for their better opportunities, which in general is fine, but I believe in education you can make the claim that you should operate more on a family ethic. And I think here at A&M there's definitely that long-term family atmosphere where we care about our students, we want to see them succeed, we believe in trusting them and giving them the highest opportunity, and that's why I'm here and why I'll be here until I'm dead.
So if you go to the memorial of the bonfire, there's a line there said, "There's a spirit that can't be told." When I first came here 13 years ago, I mean, you have to think about my background. I was born and raised in China and then studied at some of the elite schools in the northeast of the U.S., you know, some of the top universities. And you came down to here, it's a small town. It's like, gee, what is this place? But then the longer you stay, you started to feel what is that meaning is all about. There's a spirit that cannot be told. I guess that spirit is about the spirit of that what Korok said about from the students, the service, the selfless service, the leadership. You get lost in this town, there'll be 5 people coming up to you and say, "Do you need any help? I'll help you, guide you around." I bet you don't find too many places like that. And to me, that is really I think the biggest unique aspect of the Aggieland. And I'm proud to call this home. I have lived here the longest in my whole life. I have not lived in any other place longer than College Station. So I think this is the spirit that cannot be told that really is making this very attractive.
That's awesome. Great way to end. I want to thank each of our panelists. I don't know where we are on time. I know we're backing into the lunch hour. So I think we'd be happy to take a few questions, but John, you let us know. But thank you so much to each of our panelists, and really appreciate your unique perspectives. We're done. Lunchtime.